and a proven record of service that really prepares him, I think, to be not just the next Auditor General of Pennsylvania, I think the very best Auditor General that Pennsylvania has ever seen. And there's never been a more important time for this position. He serves currently as the elected Dauphin County Auditor General. He created Dauphin County's first audit division. He recovered and saved Dauphin County taxpayers over $1 million since taking office. That's a truly measurable outcome of the Auditor General position. Cost-effective government. He raising the accountability of the office. He changed how the county reports its finances from an independent audit to a more detailed and transparent, comprehensive annual financial report. He started Dauphin County Controller's Financial Literacy Initiative with working in collaboration with Harrisburg University. Tim has 25 years of professional auditing experience prior to being elected as county controller. He served in the Attorney General's office and as a retired special agent. Worked in the state's Inspector General's office as a special investigator. His professional experience includes working for UPMC Health Plan and various other federal contractors as a former internal auditor, quality manager, and a fraud investigator. Talk about a well-rounded skill set. Probably the best skill set I've ever seen for a particular office, whether it's one that you're appointed to or elected to. And obviously the Auditor General is one that we need to elect him to, with that type of toolbox and skill set and experience they would bring to the table. His involvement in the community reflects his strong commitment to serve and to make a difference. You know, he currently is involved, he has always been involved within his community. He's the chair of the Harrisburg Area Community College. I think many of you know there's a warm place in my heart for our community colleges as someone who leads on career and technical education in the nation. And to have the chair of the Harrisburg Area Community College Foundation Board of Directors. He's the chair of the Pennsylvania Financial Literacy Education Conference. He's a board member for the Chris Handles Franklin, which is the Harlem Globetrotters Foundation Board, and a member of the Harrisburg Area NAACP. Tim's extensive background in law enforcement, involvement in the community, and his current roles as Dauphin County's controller has made him a proven effective leader and given him a unique perspective on the problems that Pennsylvania faces. He is prepared to lead the Auditor General office in the days on day one. Now, I'm pleased to welcome to Profiles in Politics, Mr. Tim DeFoor. Tim, welcome to the call this morning. Welcome to Profiles in Politics.
Congressman Thompson, throughout my entire career, have I been introduced like that? Thank you so much. I actually feel like I'm talking to an old friend that I haven't seen in a few months. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me, and talking about who I am, talking about my background, and why I'm running for Auditor General. Marcy, thank you for putting this together, and for everybody who's on this Zoom meeting, thank you for participating, and letting you share my helping me share my thoughts. So here's why I'm running for Auditor General. I have spent my almost 30-year career in both the public and private sector, some of it including healthcare, performing regulatory and compliance audits and investigating fraud, waste, and abuse. First with the Inspector General's office as a special investigator, where I investigated government and contracting fraud, waste, and abuse, including investigations to determine if women and veterans-owned businesses were getting their fair share of contracts, if they were treated fairly in the bidding process, and if they were also given an opportunity to be awarded federal contracts. And also, one of the things that I did was for contractors who would within 6 months of getting their contract, will go back to the state and say, you know what, we need more funds. We need more funds because we just can't do the work, based on the original contract. We found something that we couldn't find before. And one of the things that we had discovered was that was something that happened on a regular basis. So those particular contractors, we ended up putting in provisions in the contracts that unless it was basically an act of God, or unless it was something that the state had discovered, then whatever contract you were awarded, then that's what you would have to do to work, and there was going to be no renegotiation with regards to your contract, and you weren't going to receive more than what you were to receive. And so after my career with the Inspector General's office, I was then recruited by a man by the name of Ernie Prieg to work for the Attorney General's office, where I investigated Medicaid, Medicare fraud, and prescription drug abuse, and also at that particular time, a new law called neglect of a care dependent person. That was if you were being paid to care for somebody who was elderly and needed assistance, if any way you neglected them or if you abused them, then you were then charged with a felony. And after that became law, and it became a crime to do that, I was the first law enforcement officer in the history of Pennsylvania to arrest somebody for that particular crime. So that's something that I'm very proud of. After leaving the Attorney General's office, I then went to the private sector, and I joined UPMC Health Plan and several other federal contractors, where my roles were to conduct internal audits, to make sure federal contractors were not only in compliance with federal regulations regarding safety, security of federal information, but also to make sure that the subcontractors, and as we called them at the time, subject matter experts, hired and had the properly credentialed and experienced staff to do the job. For example, if you're going to hire someone to conduct a fraud, waste, and abuse audit, then the individuals that you hire to do that need to have the credentials and need to have the experience to do that, and not just hire basically anybody off the street. So a little bit about me. I never inspired to get into politics. And as I explained earlier, sometimes you find politics, other times politics finds you. So kind of let me explain what I mean by that. I have 5 siblings. There are 6 kids altogether. For most of my life, my father worked 12 hours a day, and my mother worked at nights. For summer vacations, we would drive to my Uncle Robert's house in Warren, Ohio for family reunions. That's pretty much how we would spend our summers. My Uncle Robert was a union shop steward at the Lordstown General Motors plant in Lordstown, Ohio, the one that closed, I believe, last year. So he was a union shop steward there for about 25 years. And when we would visit my Uncle Robert, I remember him being visited by employees of the plant. And some of the things that they would talk about some of the problems that they were having at work. They would talk about some of the problems that they were having at home, real life problems. And as a young child back then, I really couldn't grasp exactly what they were talking about. But I knew these people had some real life problems. And I didn't know how to deal with it, but my Uncle Robert did. And so it was then at a very young age that I developed a a sense of empathy towards the average person. But not only towards the average person, but people who get up at the crack of dawn and go to work. It could be white collar, it could be blue collar, didn't matter who you were. I developed an empathy towards people. And I realized that the world didn't revolve around someone like me. And so it was then that I started to care. And I knew as a small child that when I grew up, I would do whatever I needed to do to help to help the community that I lived in. And one of the other things that these people would talk about, they would talk about how government would spend their money. And even as a kid, as a small kid, I kind of wonder too, as a small kid, you really don't know what government does with your money. I mean, you know that, I heard my parents talk about it. I knew that they paid taxes, and you knew that they took a portion out of their paychecks. So ultimately, that's something that kind of stuck with me. And again, I wondered even back then, and obviously, that's kind of something that set me on the career path that I ended up on, and that was a career path of investigating fraud, waste, and abuse with regards to how government uses our money, because it's all our money. We all get taxes taken out of our paycheck. So it set me on a career path on how government spends our money, and ultimately it led me to be asked to run for Dauphin County Controller in 2015. And I'd never been involved with politics, never wanted to be involved with politics, but I knew that I could make a difference, not only in that office, but also make a difference in my community as well. And so I ran, and in 2015 I won. And it was that time that I'm proud to say that I became the first African American in a 240-something year history of Dauphin County to be elected as a row officer. And it's something that I don't take lightly. So what I did, I took all those life experiences that I explained to you, and I took all those experiences into the controller's office with the understanding of who I was and also who I was representing and what my purpose was in that office and in that role. So when I got in office, there's a couple of things that I did. I created Dauphin County's first audit division. Dauphin County hadn't internally conducted audits, and I knew that was my responsibility. Because to me, when you hear the word transparency, for a long time it seemed as though that was a political buzzword. But to me, that was my reality. That was the job that I was called to do, to be transparent with regards to how Dauphin County spent taxpayer dollars. So I created the first audit division, and the purpose was to perform financial and performance audits, according to the law, and identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and come up with short-term solutions and long-term goals. And as a result, as Congressman Thompson stated, in my first term, we were able to save Dauphin County $1 million as a result of those audits and those financial reviews, and adding in some quality management pieces, which is something that's also very important to me. And I also changed the way that Dauphin County reports its finances from a general independent audit to a transparent, comprehensive annual financial report. And the difference between the regular internal audit and the comprehensive financial report, the comprehensive financial report shows a 10-year history of how Dauphin County spent its money. So you can go back years past to see how the changes in Dauphin County's finances are reflected. And all that information is in that particular report. So that's something that I felt that I needed to do. As a result of that, I was able to help Dauphin County earn its first of 6 consecutive awards for financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for that report and for an accompanying report called the Popular Annual Financial Report. So prior to me getting to Dauphin County as controller, Dauphin County had never received any type of award or any type of recognition for financial reporting. When I got there, after I got there, we now have 6 consecutive. So that's something I'm very proud to say. And it wasn't just me that was doing it. You have to have the right team behind you. And I have a fantastic team. They make me look good. And sometimes they make the job, well, the job is enjoyable, but they're a good team and they care about what they do, and they understand the purpose and the function of their roles and responsibilities, and also what the office is supposed to do. And also I serve as the secretary and chief administrator of the Dauphin County Retirement Fund. And one of the things that I also wanted to do, I wanted to make sure that our retirees knew how the Dauphin County Retirement Board was spending its money. So I also prepared the first retirement fund report, which is an overview of the Dauphin County Retirement Fund. Because I want, again, I talk about transparency. I wanted our retirees to know what was going on with regards to how we are investing their retirement money. So, and finally, one of the things that we had our investment managers do, our investment managers at the time didn't have to report how, what their fees were, what their investment and management fees were. Well, when I got there, I worked with the retirement board, and now all our investment managers have to show their fees, so we know exactly what we are paying for. And so basically, I want to take all those experiences that I just explained to you, and I want to take my empathy towards the people of this Commonwealth and take all that to the Auditor General's office. So I'm running for you, I'm running for me, I'm running for your families, and I'm also running for my opponents. So thank you for having me. And Congressman Thompson, anybody have any questions? I am.
Hey, Tim, thank you so much. And if you do have a question, but enter that into the chat for Marcy. Marcy will facilitate asking what questions you put forward. Encourage you to do that. I love the what you said about how you didn't choose politics. Politics chose you. Some people will choose politics and they try to do it by revolution, and it's a one focused goal, and it is to get elected. Yours has been sort of an evolution. You have laid all the right foundations and pavement to where those who know you and know the needs of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania choose you to be Auditor General with. It's such an important position, and it's one, as we talked about previously, Tim, it's one that probably people don't understand a lot of. The Attorney General is sort of a law and order position. It's out there in the news. The treasurer position, most organizations have treasurers, whether they're businesses or nonprofits, and so we're a little familiar with that. But Auditor General, sometimes you do get that deer in the headlight look when people say Auditor General. But if they just understand your background, the level of accountability and transparency that you have brought to Dauphin County, and the impact that you've had, I think they'd have a better, once they learn that, they'll have a better understanding. Marcy, do we have any? I have a few questions, but I want to check with the participants that we have here. Any questions that you want that you have to offer up, Marcy?
We have a shy audience today, GT. So why don't you go ahead and ask a couple of questions, and maybe that'll spur some other folks to ask a question. Just please go ahead and put that in the chat.
I will do that. Yeah, enter your questions in the chat again. I'll get kicked off. Tim, how do you see, the Pennsylvania Auditor General? how would you, as serving in that position, make a difference in the lives of everyday citizens and families of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Well, one of the first things that I would do, and I did this in the private sector. There was a piece called quality management. And in the quality management piece, what you did, you looked at different processes, and you audited and reviewed those processes to determine if they were working. Now, the Auditor General, you have your specific functions, but it's the quality management piece that I believe in state government that's always been missing. For example, when you have the unemployment compensation website that's crashed.
Mhm.
One of the things that in my opinion, that I will do as Auditor General was, as far as those types of pieces, as far as whether it's IT related or whether it's process related with regards to PennDOT, you constantly have to review those processes, one, to determine if they're working, how they're working, if they're needed, and prepare them for what possibly could be coming down the road. There really should be nothing, if government is paying attention to what is happening in the rest of the world, there really shouldn't be a lot of surprises. So that's why you have that quality management piece, and that's why you have that internal audit piece, to prepare yourself for what could be coming down the road. And by the time it comes, you're ready for it.
Well, what's been coming down the road, obviously in the middle of this coronavirus, this pandemic situation, has been a lot of resources, a tremendous amount of resources, monies that have been authorized and appropriated by Congress. I've had a role within that with the CARES package. Billions and billions and billions of dollars coming to Pennsylvania. And a lot of that coming to the governor's office. Some of it is obviously going direct to our hospitals, our schools. And given that influx of all these monies, and quite frankly, I'm always a little sensitive that, when we put something forward, for example, the monies that were to be split 45% to county and local government, 55% to the state, and we're talking about monies that were unanticipated, obviously, because nobody saw this virus coming in the way that it did. What role should the Auditor General serve to assure that these monies that have now flowed into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are actually used for the purpose that Congress intended?
Well, here's the first thing you do, and it goes to what you just said, for the purposes that Congress intended. So what the Auditor General needs to do, or me as Auditor General, the first thing I would need to do is find out what were the intentions. And what I mean by that is, what are the requirements of these funds? Who are they supposed to go to? So the first thing you do is identify where they're supposed to go. Now, the Auditor General's office, one of its responsibilities is to conduct audits after the money has been spent. But most of the work actually begins once you're talking about how the money will be spent. And what I mean by that is, understanding the requirements, the rules and regulations, and the moment that check is cashed, what the Auditor General's role is supposed to be is to make sure that those funds are spent in the way that Congressman Thompson, that you just stated.
So really,
I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say, it sounds like then the role of the Auditor General really is to be that financial watchdog for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Exactly. So here's the way. So I was asked the question, and I mentioned earlier that I have a 16-year-old nephew. So when I decided to run for Auditor General, he asked the question, what exactly does the Auditor General does? And he mentioned Watchdog. And the way I explained it to him, it's like, suppose you have a pile of money, and you have a dog guarding that pile of money. Somebody comes in who's supposed to do a certain thing with some of the money. They take what they need. The dog watches them, and the dog makes sure that those funds are spent on what they're supposed to be spent on. Okay, if that happens, dog is fine. Dog goes back and continues to watch the pile of money. Somebody else comes, takes some money, and they don't do what they're supposed to do with those funds. It is then that dog's responsibility to bite that person in the rear end. And so that's pretty much the job of the Auditor General. If you don't do what you're supposed to do with those funds, it's my job to identify that and to bite that person.
Very good. Well, we need that kind of accountability. Frequently, I hear not just myself, but a lot of other people talking about sometimes when the resources in Harrisburg kind of drop into a dark hole, and and sometimes it just goes maybe to Philadelphia. That obviously, those of us who live outside of Philadelphia, that's a perception we have, as opposed to being spread appropriately and going for the intended purpose. And having a strong watchdog with a great bite would be important. Marcy, I think we have some questions. I'm going to turn it back over to you to facilitate those.
Sure thing. One question from David is, as Auditor General, Tim, what do you see as your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge. Well, actually, there are several of them, but the one thing that keeps popping up is, I'm not sure if you are familiar with something called the Honor Code. And what the Honor Code is that currently in Pennsylvania, any contracts are supposed to be made available to the public and posted on the treasurer's website. And they leave it up to those specific departments to post those contracts on the treasurer's website. And they go by what's called the Honor Code. And there's that doesn't always happen. So we have contracts that are being awarded to state departments, and we have no idea what the contracts are for, what the dollar amounts are, or who even was awarded those contracts. Prime example, and even though it doesn't involve a ton of money, but this is the point that I'm getting to. Several years ago, the Office of the Inspector General was given arrest powers, and they were given search warrant powers. And nothing else, just those two. So as a result, the Inspector General's office purchased $160,000 worth of firearms. Because you have arrest powers, because you have search warrant powers, doesn't mean you have the right or the legal authority to carry a firearm. Mm-hmm. But they purchased those anyway. And no one knew, and no one had known about it. The then Inspector General that made those purchases, that authorized those purchases, was then an elected judge in another county. Nobody knew about the purchasing of those firearms until there was a report, I believe earlier this year or late last year, that this had happened. So David, I hopefully I answered your question that my biggest issue, and one of the things that most concerns me, is the lack of transparency that we currently have with regards to the awarding of state contracts. There shouldn't be an honor code. There shouldn't be an option to whether or not you a department wants to post its contract on the state treasurer's website. It should happen automatically. So thank you.
Great. Okay, another question for you, Tim. And this is from Mike, who says Governor Wolf has proposed creating a salaried coronavirus corps to track and assist COVID-19 positive citizens. How would you ensure that funds were not misappropriated or citizens' rights violated?
And that's a very, very good question. This coronavirus has pretty much changed our lives for the foreseeable future. And, you know, in some respects, we may not ever go back to the way things were. So, and again, the same thing with regards to this situation is where you have to talk to the governor and say, okay, so as far as what's your plan? What's your plan with regards to not only spending these funds, but what's your plan with regards to what you're going to do with these funds? Who are going to get these funds? And how are you also collecting the data? Which is another problem that's currently going on, is the collection of data. Where you have the John Hopkins or the CDC having one set of information with regards to what's going on in your county or what's going on in your state, but you have your local health officials that have another set of data. So the first thing you have to do is, okay, as far as the information that we need to take this next step with regards to allocation of funds to do whatever we need to do, we have to make sure that we have the right information. And to make sure that as far as collecting the data, collecting the information that we need in order to do our job, we have to make sure that we are all on the same page, and make sure that there's one way of accurately collecting the information. Because if you don't collect the data correctly, then regardless of what you do, it's going to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure that you collect the data in a way that is accurate. And as Auditor General, that's one thing that I would definitely do. Make sure that there is the correct collection of data.
Terrific answer. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Congressman GT.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Marcy. Tim, you know, checks and balances are so important today. We're seeing that, you know, in Washington, we exercise checks and balances pretty aggressively, obviously. And we have a good teamwork. I mean, what we've been able to do specifically with this coronavirus, you know, with the president leads, but he works with Congress, and we provide authority, we provide funding, we provide authorization. That's a part of the checks and balances in Washington. What do you see the role of checks and balances of the Auditor General in terms of in Harrisburg? What role will you play as our next Auditor General in terms of being a part of that good government, responsible government checks and balances system that we are so proud of?
Well, there's a couple of things that I would do. One is, of course, follow the fiscal code, and it's the fiscal code that tells the Auditor General what their roles and responsibilities are and how they're to do their job. But also, you know, I call all parties, I call sometimes you have to work with state legislators, something called or to write laws, because something may come up that may be completely unexpected, like what we're dealing with now. So you have to work with them in order to make their job manageable, but also do a service by the people of this Commonwealth. Additionally, if there's something that necessarily isn't in the Auditor General's job description. The Auditor General has a voice, a very loud voice. And if there's something as Auditor General that I feel is not right, and it may not necessarily be in my job description, I will get in front of a microphone, get in front of the press, and I'll talk about it. So I will use my voice, and I've done that already. I've done that in Dauphin County already. But I will use my voice.
Very good.
Official for the people of this Commonwealth.
Well, Tim, one last question for you. Obviously, you're running. We've got a primary coming up on June 2nd, and then general election the first week in November, and your name will be on the ballot. I encourage. I want to let you know this is my mail-in ballot. You're winning 1-0. Okay, 1-0.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So this is going in the mail today using the new mail-in ballot, and I encourage everyone to exercise what I believe is a right and a responsibility, and that's voting. And the state government made that a little easier with the no-fault mail-in ballots, so we need to exercise that. But if someone obviously running for office and running for statewide office takes resources, because you're going to have to do a lot of advertising, and advertising the media comes at a cost. That's why campaigns can be so expensive. So if someone is going to support you, how would they do that?
Well, there's a couple ways that you can support me. In these particular hard times, it's difficult to raise funds. So what you can do, you can go on my website, which is www.DeFoor.com, and you can sign up to volunteer. You can also make a donation to my campaign. And so those are probably the best two ways. But also you could spread the word about me. And if there's any group that you would like me to speak to, I would be more than happy to. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy getting to understand and getting to know the people of this Commonwealth that I hope to represent on November 5th.
Very good. Give me that website again, www.DeFoor.
www.DeFoor, the number 4,
PA.
.com. Yeah, sorry, yeah, DeFoor4PA.com. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. I'm proud to support you. Tim DeFoor, 2015, he won in a competitive race in Dauphin County, which can be a bigger, more challenging county, one with round out to 56% of the vote. As a vote of confidence and acknowledgement of what an excellent job of bringing transparency and accountability to the controller position. I think I called you Auditor General when I first started out, but that's more of a prophecy than I guess.
That's exactly what it is.
Than getting it accurate. But you're 56% in your race for controller in a bigger county that can be a little tougher, obviously. And as a vote of confidence, reelected in 2019 with 99.76% of the vote. We got to get out and talk with those handful of people who just didn't know what they were doing when they didn't vote for you. So,
yeah, exactly. In the county where the Democrats outnumber the Republicans by 12,000.
Yeah, that is great. Well, Tim, thanks for joining Profiles in Politics today. Thanks for being such a great friend and a great leader, and will be the absolute best Pennsylvania Auditor General we will ever have had. So thank all of you for taking time out this morning for joining in meeting Tim. Thanks for the great questions, Tim. We're gonna push this out. Obviously, we'll make sure you have it for your website. I'll be pushing out on my side as well, so we can do everything we can to promote just a great leader that we have in you. So thank you, everybody, for being on Profiles in Politics this morning. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody have a great day. Take care. Stay well. Stay healthy.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everybody, for joining the call, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.